Hey, everybody. Welcome to Distorted Podcast. I do my best to cover topics, different mental health things, usually through the lens of how it's distorted and what we can do to overcome that. Unlike when I'm doing regular therapy, where I'm there to meet the needs that the client brings to me, this presentation, this platform allows me to sort of take it to a different level and talk about it in a way that I normally would not do in a therapeutic session. But it's a freedom to explore the topic. So what I want to talk about today is the distortion of going from normal reactions, normal human reaction to a negative behavior from another person. And I want to try to touch on the layers that it takes in order to go from our reaction, behavioral reaction, thought reaction, emotion reaction, to what I'm going to call surrender. And so it's for a lot of people very difficult to live in the presentation of surrender. And I want to try to make it make more sense so that maybe we can strive for that in ways that we haven't done before. So that being said, I'm going to try to set up a premise here and take you through some of the stages that might be required for you to take this to a different level of grace, a different level of interaction, and maybe it lifts a little bit of the weight off your own shoulders. The example I'm going to use is sort of a low-level concern. I'm going to talk about it through the lens of, say, a rude encounter. So maybe loud music from a car or loud music from a neighbor. Something, I don't want to get caught up in the legalities of things. I want to just keep it simple as a reactionary thing. Somebody plays loud music and it is disruptive in some way to you. So again, not at 10 o'clock at night where it becomes a legal thing. Just in general, you start to look at the layers of what go into this, the choice being made by another person, questions that you can't really answer without knowing the person, talking to the person. Why are they doing it? Why do they choose to do this? Do they understand it to be anything other than them meeting a need that they have? Is there any kind of thought around how it's disruptive for other people? Is it because they're unknowing? Is it because they're inconsistent? Is it because they don't have compassion or empathy? There's lots of layers to this as to why a person would choose to do a particular behavior. And then in turn, there's a lot of reasons why you then would be thrown off or feel put off by somebody's behavior, disagreeable behavior, or just, intrusive behavior like loud music. So we don't necessarily know the cause of why they chose it. We can speculate all day long, but we don't actually know why someone puts music up loud. And again, the many reasons we could come up with. Maybe they're hard of hearing, they're having a party, whatever it is. So you start off with your initial reaction. How it initially makes you feel is based on your initial perception of somebody doing something disruptive to you. Loud music might initially hit you as rude, inappropriate. So your initial reaction might be frustration, might be anger, might be irritation, might be resentment because it's happened several times. And you start with that initial because your initial perception is that what they're doing is wrong, that what they're doing is inappropriate, not reasonable. And I like to look at things through the lens of reasonable and appropriate because it allows us to define layers of what's acceptable, what am I willing to forgive when we start looking at it through the lens of, while someone may have done something reasonable to them, it wasn't appropriate at the time that they did it. So there's different layers to that. So now we look at, okay, initial reaction, you don't usually have a lot of control over that. It's just trying to make sense out of it. It's just trying to be straight with the emotion. And anger, again, we talked about previous and we will talk future. It's a boundary maker. It is a way to present self without being too vulnerable. It pushes away the actual emotion that you're experiencing. That piece is important because underneath the anger component, it gets to the deeper levels of who we are. Those deeper levels of who we are is how we're going to inevitably get to the softer side of how to respond to people, how to let go of our perception and control and give it up to grace or give it up to a spiritual response that we're not easily going to have. So again, up front, cognitive, that's how I would approach it most often than not, give you a way to interpret how you perceive something, The emotion is natural to that perception, probably healthy for you because it's a boundary. The boundary is important because you want space between you and someone who's doing something that's disruptive or uncomfortable to you. So all that makes sense on that level. So now that you've got this idea that your initial reaction is not the end of the story, we go to the next level. Is it wrong for me to have a negative response towards what I perceive to be an intrusion? Is that negative? Is that bad? Is it okay that I have a limit to something? The music's too loud for too long and I have a limit to the tolerance that I have. Is that in and of itself wrong? If we can get past that and recognize that it is okay to not just accept everything that's happening around you, we have to get it to a deeper place of saying, I no longer need to know the why. I no longer need to know why they're doing it. I know that I disagree, but I want to get to the deeper level of not having to know why they're doing the disagreeable thing because I can't control it anyways. So again, taking legality off the table, this is just a preference in behavior, and I don't like what I'm experiencing. I have a negative response to that. I have a feeling that is disruptive to me, and I want to overcome that, okay? That's where we're at. So the why they're doing it, because I may not know, I have to now make a decision how I want to continue to perceive. The reason we start there is because that perception change is going to help me think differently, feel differently, behave differently. So that's my first step. It's not about whether or not I want to view the problem as a good thing. It's about me saying I no longer want to hold on to what I'm experiencing emotionally. I no longer want to be behaving by, I don't know, banging my head against the wall because I'm infuriated with the loud sounds that are coming from the other apartment or the car that's driving by. So now I'm having to delve into, this isn't based on relationship because I may not have one. So I may not feel like I have a foundational piece to go over and talk to that person and request a change in their behavior. I'm simply trying to change my perception about the thing that I'm uncomfortable with. If I want to have it in relation, then I'd have to create one. Now that may not happen on the spot, but at some point I might have to consider, do I have more room to show grace to another human being if I have some type of relational perspective? In the example that I gave with somebody driving in traffic next to you, that makes no sense. How are you going to have a relationship with her? That makes no sense. If I'm talking about it from the perspective of someone you live nearby or someone that you've experienced at work who snaps their gum in the next cubicle, my job is to now look at this. This is a continuing irritation to me. It's causing me frustration and anger, and I'm thinking about lashing out. I'm thinking about having a negative reaction to that. So now I have to practice this concept of getting past knowing why they're doing it. Instead of trying to solve the why, I just am simply focusing now on my reaction to it. This is an important step to take towards the level of surrender. I'm no longer trying to figure out the why, the wrong and the right of the situation. I'm stepping back from the wrong and the right. I'm stepping back from trying to figure out why a person's acting the way that they're acting. And then I'm stepping back from the concept that I have that because it was wrong, I have to do something about it. Because remember, we have to let go of the right or wrong. We're not talking about anything legal here. We're not talking about anything intrusively criminal. They're not in your personal space. We're just talking about a particular behavior that you find off-putting or annoying. I know that sounds very surfacey, but I'm starting there for a reason. If I have to forego my instinct, my initial reaction, I have to pause long enough, practice pausing a reaction to my anger, right? The angry phone call, the angry knock on the door, the negative response back to them to retaliate, to play loud music back at them, to let them know how wrong I think they are. And this could be about any topic, by the way. To have to insist on making sure they know that I think you're wrong. If you know they're wrong, do you have to tell someone they're wrong? Is it enough for you to have a sense of something and not have to get validated for that? To not have to express that to another person in order for it to be true? Can you have a feeling based on a thought and not have to get validation through someone else's response. I'll take it a step further, not have to go find an ally, not have to go find another person who agrees with you that the off-putting behavior that you're experiencing has to be acknowledged by a third party so that it validates you further. Is that necessary, or can you forego that? If I can forego wanting to know why the person is doing what they're doing, and I can forego trying to validate myself with justification through a third party, I'm starting to peel away the layers. I'm struggling with my own sense of why I react the way I do. So now it's less about what they did and more about why I'm responding the way I'm responding. This is a shift, okay? Less about why they did what they did, less about trying to know why they did what they did, less about trying to inform them of how wrong they are, and more about looking at myself. Why am I responding this way? What is it about my perception that leads me to my feeling and my behavior? And if I don't like that, can I do something about it? I'm not suggesting that somebody doing a disruptive behavior has to be applauded for that or has to be given permission to continue to do it. I'm suggesting that sometimes we are put in front of difficult situations that we can't change because it's not our behavior that we're changing. So we're changing how we respond, how we perceive it. This is what I'm suggesting. So I'm saying, first and foremost, get away from wanting to figure it out. It may not make sense. Taking it back to self-reflection, I want to be more aware of why I think what I think and why I go to the lane of upset, resentment, anger. And how long do I want to carry that? How long do I want to carry that? Because I insist on holding on to the fact that what's being done is wrong. Again, there are times when you have to righteously step into something, create a boundary that creates space between you and another person. I'm not adverse to that, because that doesn't suggest that I'm having to tell this other person to stop what they're doing, because I may not be able to. I may not be able to figure out the why. I might have to remove myself, but there's a way to do that that is not adversarial, okay? If I want to have a response of non-vengeance, of turning the other cheek, not so that I'm exposed to more damage, but so that I don't retaliate in the same way. You did me wrong, I'm going to do you wrong. Very easy to get caught up in that type of behavior. If I step away long enough to say to myself, I don't understand why this is happening, but I want to deal with how it makes me feel, that starts with changing your perception. That starts with challenging the way you interpret, because you may not have the whole story. You've ever heard this one before, yours, mine, and the truth? 3 sides to every story. You're always going to know what you thought. You don't have to spend a lot of time on that. You know what you think, but you are missing the piece of why they did what they did. Christ-like behavior takes practice, and it takes time to develop. And it has to be purposeful. I have to intentionally give up my access, my right, if you will, to know the why, because I may never get the answer. In order for me to get to the point of surrendering my will, I have to be able to be okay with, find peace in, not always having an answer, not always having a solution that causes the other person to do what I want them to do, in a way that I want them to do it, in a way that no longer causes me harm, whether that's real or perceived. To let go of full understanding, and I'm not talking about being naive. I'm saying that there's purpose in practicing a challenge in your perception, that you somehow are going to have control, that you somehow are going to have all outcomes defined and explained to you. Now, hopefully you're following me on this and you're seeing where this presentation of surrender starts to come in from something as simplistic as a disappointing behavior from another human being. It's not A to B. there is degrees to working towards letting go of wanting things to make sense to me, always work out for me, always be what I want and in the way that I want, and be able to accept my ability to navigate when that doesn't happen. That I can still do things healthy for me when others around me are not. I don't have to get agreement in order to be okay. Now, the last piece, if you will, in order for me to practice a behavior, be purposeful in it, develop it, I'm also going to have to trust that it actually has an outcome that would be beneficial to me. That the concept of surrendering, not always having a say, is actually not going to harm me. That there is a God with a better viewpoint than you, that has knowledge beyond you, that has explanations you won't understand, and being comfortable in the idea of not having to always have every piece of information, every solution, every person behaving in a way that makes you feel better, rather changing the perception of, I don't need everything to work out for me to be okay. I am better than that in how I've been created. I have the ability to be resilient. I have the ability to overcome because I have a connection to my Heavenly Father. Now, some people don't like to hear that because, well, where does that leave me? Totally at the will? No, I'm not suggesting that. I'm saying that our part in this is to challenge the perception that I have to have control in order to be okay. It's the whole point of surrender, is I don't have control, right? I have talked with my wife about this on a previous conversation we had about why there's more women in the pews than men. I think to some level men struggle with this more because in the flesh, in the purposefulness of life, we oftentimes hold on to control because it's part of how we function. It's a part of how we try to get success. We want to have a say in what's happening around. It's very difficult to let go of that. Again, there's no absolutes here. I'm not talking about absolutes. I know I hate justifying everything I'm saying, but I know as soon as I say it, there's a question. What does that exactly mean? I don't want to have to explain every little bit of what I'm saying, and hopefully in the future I won't. I'm suggesting that the layers that have to be peeled away take time. You have to purposefully practice allowing yourself to not always have the why, of not always being able to have control over what someone else is doing. Yet you can perceive it differently, especially if there's skin in the game and this is someone you value. Change your perception of why you have to be disrupted by whatever it is they're doing, why there's not an alternative, why there's not another behavior you can engage in. You might have to go outside the box to figure that one out. Instead of, no, I'd rather just be upset. I'd rather just be mad because someone is saying or doing something that I don't want them to do. There's got to be an alternative to that. In the case of television, you'll always hear somebody say, if you don't like the show, turn it off. And that is, in some sense, the cut and dry example here. And I'm saying that I understand with human beings, you can't always turn away from them. You have a supervisor you don't like at work. You have a family member that you see every holiday. It's not always easy just to shut them off. So there has to be an alternative. There has to be an adjustment. There has to be a change in perception. There has to be a challenge to how you want to act. And that's going to come from you, not them. Great if they do. Great if they change. Great. But I'm suggesting that the surrender piece is letting go. And in that, you might find an answer you weren't looking for. And it might make it easier to not always be the one in control, to not always be the one that has to have every answer. Try this from a starting place. Start challenging the idea that you always have to have every outcome planned, and knowledge of every reason why people do what they do. Start there. You really need to know why everything is happening. Sometimes the idea of faith is trusting in something you can't fully conceptualize, rather than mocking it because of that. I'm going to leave it there. Appreciate your time. Follow any way you can. Comment if you'd like. I appreciate the attention that you guys are paying to this, that you're watching. If you have ideas that you want me to touch on, I will. And I really do appreciate you out there being a part of this. We'll see you on the next one. Thank you.